Hello, this is your host, Matt Brunquell, for today's webinar on converting Lotus Notes applications to .NET. Conversion projects can be a low-cost, effective way to retain your investment in Lotus Notes applications. Before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items. For those of you new to Composer Technologies, we are a U.S.-based company that does application modernizations worldwide. We encourage questions on the webinar, and the way you do that is to use the Q&A button on your WebEx toolbar. It's the button with the question mark, and there's also a chat button, but it just makes it easier for Brian and I to look in one panel for the questions to make sure we address all of them. Now, I mentioned Brian, that's Brian Halstead, and he'll be providing the demonstration portion today. Brian is one of our senior, probably the most senior migration specialists that we have for Notes migration projects, and we'll be introducing him for the demo portion. So with that, let's go ahead and review the agenda. So the objective for today's presentation is to provide you with the information on converting Lotus Notes applications into the .NET environment. We'll start with an introduction that includes an overview of Composer Technologies, and next we'll cover the types of Notes applications to convert and the key factors to consider when converting Notes applications to .NET. As some context going into the demo, we'll also give you a background on the Composer Notes solution. Now we'll follow this with a demonstration so you can see how easy it can be to migrate and deploy a Lotus Notes application into a .NET environment. And we'll follow this with a Q&A session. So feel free to post questions throughout the briefing and the demo, and then we'll get to them during the Q&A session. Composer Technologies and its Composer Notes business in particular is part of Dagis, who has over 30 years of experience in database, development tools, and migrations. The Composer Notes business has an established and very successful practice for converting Notes applications to .NET. Lotus Notes applications can be classified into 4 different types. There are applications which range from data-centric to process-centric, which we'll illustrate here on this horizontal axis. And then on the vertical axis, you can see applications that range from template-based to custom design-based, and we'll represent them here. Now, when you combine the horizontal and vertical axes, you have Notes applications represented in the 4 quadrants above. Now, the Composer Notes solution that we'll demo to you today is particularly well suited to the quadrant 4 applications, which are process and custom centric. And we'll take a look now at the key conversion factors for these quadrant 4 applications. Notes applications in Quadrant 4 often have large data volumes, a lot of functionality coded in Formula or Lotus script, agents, and hides/when functionality. And a migrated application in this quadrant should be as intuitive for the original developers to maintain as it is for new developers with no experience in Lotus Notes. And practically speaking, this means that your vendor of choice should provide a one-to-one conversion in the code as much as this is possible. That being said, conversion is more than the business logic and user interface created by the Notes developer. All of the underlying capabilities that the Lotus Notes framework provided for these applications must be replicated as well. Our customers have also emphasized the benefit of maintaining the look, feel, and navigation for the initial conversion. Reproducing all of the functionality of the application is not enough. It needs to behave similarly over in the new environment in order to minimize the impact on the end users and avoid retraining. And avoiding retraining can be a significant cost savings, especially if there's a large number of users. They also find it's much more straightforward to test in a conversion project versus a rewrite to make sure all the functionality and behavior is present. User testing in the new application is more difficult if you cannot compare it directly with the original Notes application in a like-for-like manner. Now, the Composer Notes solution has been out for over 7 years And conversions can be delivered as a service, or the tool can be licensed with training and support. With Composer Notes, you can migrate complex notes applications to an ASP.NET application. And much of the conversion is automated, but there are some items that are not converted automatically due to the environmental differences between Lotus Notes and a three-tier .NET architecture. And as part of the tool, there's an analyzer utility which will flag these differences so the time and effort to complete the migration can be estimated. The generated application is a .NET application and can be maintained and extended in Visual Studio. And all of the source code is provided, so there are no runtime licensing dependencies. The solution does not convert Notes applications to SharePoint. Some Notes applications are well suited to SharePoint, like the Nifty 50 template-based applications or simple forms which capture data. However, many customers have found that their more complex Notes applications are not a good fit in SharePoint. These include Notes applications that have large data volumes, a lot of functionality coded in Formula or Lotus script, agents, and hides wins functionalities. These are the elements I mentioned previously specific to those Quadrant 4 applications. This is a very busy graphic, but what it illustrates is the process and methodology that we use for Notes migration projects, and just wanted to give you a feel for what the conversion process entails. The key point to take away from this busy graphic is that this solution has been out for over 7 years, and we've been successful on all of our projects, so there is a proven and successful method for migrating complex Notes applications to .NET. So I won't go through all of the details on the slide, but just some high-level points. As mentioned in the previous slide, there is an analyzer to identify the cost, time, and effort to migrate the NSFs, and this is how we're able to do fixed-price projects when we perform the migration as a service. There are things not automatically migrated by the tool, which I had mentioned. The analyzer identifies these, and this is still addressed as part of the migration project. Examples of what's not migrated automatically, by the way, just to give you a few examples: third-party integration points, JavaScript, custom security providers, for example, digital signatures, and complex office automation. Again, these have to be addressed still in the migration project, and we have experience with that in working with our customer projects, and that all gets factored in so you do get a complete migration. Now on the next slide, we'll just review very quickly the version supported for the target platform shown on the right-hand slide here, on the right hand of the slide. So here are the platform details for the converted application to be deployed, and I'll let you read through that, but it's an ASP.NET application that gets deployed. It goes up to the .NET 4.0 framework, works with Visual Studio 2010, works with IE9 browser natively. So with that background, we'll go ahead and go into the demonstration, and here's what you'll see in the demo. We will convert a Lotus Notes application to an ASP.NET app. It's not as large as some customer applications, but it does have the components and business logic that you see in most complex Lotus apps. And so, you know, like those hides wins, Lotus script, formula logic, and so forth. If we were to run this through our analyzer utility, it would come up as a simple or kind of a low intermediate complexity just because of its smaller size. This is a full conversion of the UI, or user interface, the business logic, the notes database, the document data, and the ACL security. And after converting the application, we'll deploy it so you can see the same functionality and navigation of the Notes client app in a browser. And you can see how the impact to the end users is minimized. And we'll also take some time to look at the converted code in Visual Studio, and you'll see how the project hierarchy and naming of the components is maintained. And with that, I will turn this over to Brian Halstead for the demo. Give me one sec, Brian, and I will make you the presenter. Now, Brian, I'm not sure. I don't see you in on audio. Give me 1 second here to see if we can get Brian on audio. All right, we just need to give Brian a few minutes here to restart his computer. Something happened, so he has to get back in and get on the audio. Let me go and see if we have any questions yet that we can address. And we'll answer a few questions while we wait for Brian to get logged back in. So one of the questions here is, how is the tool licensed? So when we license the tool to a customer, because it has been productized, when we first delivered this solution 7 years ago, we only offered it as a service just to figure out what needed to be in there and to mature it. But as we did some projects, we were able to kind of complete the product out and productize it with documentation and additional utilities needed and put training content around it. And so the way the tool is licensed when a customer wants to do it is it's licensed per NSF to be converted. So there's a price per NSF, and then there is, and that includes a price for 1 year support and maintenance. And then most customers, you have the option to renew that maintenance after the first year, but most customers don't because their conversion projects are finished within that time frame. And then there's a training course that they go through as well. It's a 3.5-day training course, and that can be held on site at the customer site, or it can be held at our headquarters, which is in Roseville, California, which is Northern California. And the range of attendees that we see in terms of their background or skill sets, we see the range from Notes developers who worked with the original app to .NET developers who have no familiarity with Lotus Notes. So we've seen that spectrum, and they go through the training and they're able to use the tool to do migrations. It does help to have at least a little bit of context of Lotus Notes because you're working with this application to convert it over. But at the end of the day, having basic .NET experience is what you really want because that's what you're going to be maintaining and extending the application and moving forward. Next question. Would it be possible to get a recording of this presentation? Yes, in fact, we're recording this webinar, and so it will be available on our website at about probably, what is today? Thursday. It should be available on the website tomorrow at our website, composertechnologies.com. And I don't see any other questions at the moment. If you have a question, please post it, and I'll go over it. We're just waiting for Brian to get his audio back so we can start the demo portion. Okay, Brian's back. Let me unmute him. And I think
okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good.
Excellent. Let me,
okay.
I think I still have your other one that you had to get out of as the presenter.
Yep.
Let me make the one that you're on now as presenter. There we go. All right, I think the floor is yours now.
Okay. Actually, the other, I'm gonna have to leave this because I have the other WebEx open still, and it's not the right one. So let me leave that one real fast and go to the other one. So it's gonna probably disconnect me here. So I'll be right back.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Just give us 30 seconds as he comes back on the other session.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All righty. Let me just get, so am I a presenter right now?
You are. You're set as the presenter. Nothing has changed on the screen yet, so.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Let me just get this going.
There we go.
Okay, so can, I don't know if anyone can respond, but can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, the Visual Studio 2010 is showing on the screen now.
Okay. So what I'm going to do today is convert what we call our training application, which we use in our training course for Composer for Notes. And the first way we go about doing this is the way the Composer solution works is it's a Visual Studio project, a website project. And when you go to a new website in Visual Studio, you'll see Composer website listed as one of the project templates that you can use to create a new project in Visual Studio, a new website. So today I'm going to go ahead and create a new website. I'm just going to call it Demo and say OK. And then the next part that comes up is the Import Wizard. So in this Wizard dialog, we have the option to select the NSF, which is already selected for our training database. We have some other various options, like the default namespace will be Composer. We're going to import data. At times you may not want to import data if you have a very large NSF. So if you have hundreds of thousands of records, it could extend the amount of time that the whole process takes. So we can always import the data later through our data importer utility. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and import it because the NSF I'm using only has a handful of documents in it. And then there's also just other various options here to handle how we handle date times, array objects, various elements that may or may not be ignored within the NSF. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And for the database, let me just double check that it is all good to go here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a default database. Actually, that one's already there. Let me delete it. In SQL Server here. So I'm just going to use the default options for right now and create a new database. So the database is now here in SQL Server. So back to the wizard, I have the database selected here, Demo. I'm using the option of full text index and also index attachments from the NFF, and use a trusted connection. I'm going to test that connection, and we succeed. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish. Now during this process, the converter will analyze the NSF, and it goes through all the elements in the NSF, and it will also scan the documents, and the status is updated here in the status bar of Visual Studio. And then it starts creating all the code classes and ASPX web pages that will make up the converted application. And then it imports the document data into the database. And it should be done right now. Now the message here, what it's trying to say is that there are various constructs or code places within the NSF that don't really translate over to a .NET environment and are not implemented as part of our Notes runtime. So this is just saying that there may be some extra work involved, some manual work within the converted code that needs to be addressed and reviewed by a developer. So what we do is we insert to-do comments into the code that identify these locations within the converted application that need to be reviewed and possibly adjusted by a developer. So before I go any further here, I just want to show what this training database actually looks like in Notes first, and then I'll show what the converted application looks once I launch it within Visual Studio. Just give my Notes a second to open up here. Okay, so here's our training database. And this is kind of just, run-of-the-mill application that looks, very note-style application. And it's used to handle accounting journal entries and just various accounting tasks within an organization. So we have, various views here on the left within an outline. We have some, categorized views here. And then within the documents themselves, so here's the main form for the application. So, we have various action buttons across the top. We have a tab table here. And we also have a rich text field down here with an attachment. And then various controls like drop-down lists and radio buttons. And these are all populated through formula language within the forms design. So, this is just kind of the general gist of how this application looks in Notes. So let me go back to our converted application now. And I'll cover kind of the organization here within the solution in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and build this. Hit build, fine. And now I'm just going to start up the main view from the application. Okay, so now this is the Composer application, and as we see on the left, there are some slight UI differences, like the images. We can't pull the images over from the outlines. So with any converted application, there is usually some UI that needs to be slightly adjusted manually within the the design of the application within the ASPX pages. But overall, if a user was previously using the notes database and just came to this one right away, they could probably have no problem navigating around and doing the necessary work that they need to do. So, as I said, here we have a view. We also have a categorized view. So this is kind of like one of the categorized views and how they look. And if we go ahead and open up one of the documents, we'll see that everything came over from the original NSF. We have our tab control here that has all the tab information from the previous design and notes. We have a rich text field with the attachments that came over. And also the various controls, like the drop-down list, they're also populated through the same logic that populated the controls within notes. And the various action buttons, too. Now, some of the action buttons aren't showing right now because they were based on security, and security hasn't been enabled for this particular application yet because I haven't added that configuration to the web config to connect to a security provider. So through the hides whens from the original application, it's actually hiding additional buttons up here. And that's having all the hide whens come over as well for applications. And this is also some logic that came over from the application that is asking, prompting me if I'm really sure, and this is something that was from the custom code in the NSF. So that is the application in a nutshell, more or less. Here's another view, and we support all the view options. So we have icons that come over, and all the various column options that came from those views as well. So if we look at the structure of this application, what happens is we will organize the various elements that came from the NSF into folders within the app code folder for the website project. So we have all of our shared actions, agents, forms, script libraries. Services is what's added by our converter utility, and then subforms and views. The main difference probably between the NSF and the ASP.NET application is the fact that now the UI and the business logic, the background code, is actually separate now. So you have the UI portion, which is going to be in ASPX or ASCX user controls. And then within the app code folder, you'll have a matching file that matches the same name as the ASPX file that will contain all of the code that got converted from the NSF. So for this particular form, we have two main classes within this form. We have what we call our value class, and this class represents the document as it would exist within memory. And it contains field attributes which define each item in that document or each field. The second main class is also it's called a manager class. And the manager class is where all of that business logic for that form will be converted. So any computed fields, any form events like query open, post open, query save, all of that will exist here. And the logic from the Lotus script logic and formula language logic will be converted here into C#. You'll notice that we have fully implemented C# classes that represent all the Lotus script notes classes, and they work pretty much the same way in C# as they do in Lotus script, with slight syntactical differences. But if someone was not familiar with C# and came from Lotus script and saw this code, they could pick up on it pretty quick because it looks very similar to the Lotus script. Also, formula language is supported through what we call our @ class. So instead of using the @ symbol, we just use the word @. And in this class, we have all of the @ functions that were from formula language. So all of that stuff gets converted over. That's about it for the main demonstration. Are there any questions. And Matt, I'm not sure where to see the questions here.
No, that's all right. So what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions. And
okay.
As I mentioned at the beginning, the way that you do that is on your WebEx toolbar, there's a button with a question mark. And so just enter your question there and post it that way. And we'll give you a minute or two here to post any questions that you might have. Brian, there were two while you were getting your audio set up that I went through just to fill the time between the end of the briefing part and the demo part. One was about how is the tool licensed? So I went over that, and then one was asking about how they could get a recording of the presentation, and I let them know that this will be on our website in the next day or so.
Okay.
So. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So if there's no other questions at this point, what we'll do is we'll start closing out the webinar. So Brian and I want to thank you for participating. Hopefully you got a feel for how easy it can be to convert Lotus Notes applications to .NET. We showed you a basic Notes application, but it had all of the elements you would expect to see in some of the more complex customer apps, formula logic, Lotus script, hides wins functionality, different types of views. And you can see that in the conversion, it was able to recreate that in the browser with minimal impact to the end user. And then you saw how in the actual conversion code itself, how the way the hierarchy in the project with all the folders and just even how the naming conventions are maintained for Lotus script and formula logic makes it very, very easy to maintain and extend this code moving forward. So again, we'll have a recording of this available here by tomorrow on our website, which is www.composertechnologies.com. And when you exit out, you'll get a little 3-question survey on the webinar. Let us know how we did. If there were particular things that you were expecting to see and did not, let us know, because we use that feedback to incorporate into the future webinar topics. We do these about every other month. And if there are other things that you would like for follow-up, you can leave us a message there on that as well. Thanks, and have a great day.